Hey everybody, so tomorrow we're going to be looking at Seneca's On the Shortness of Life. There's a lot in this text, but the overriding impulse of it, and what I think the most interesting dimension of it, is Seneca's view that human excellence has to do with making the right kind of use of your own lifetime. Interesting to put this idea up against Socrates' argument in the Meno that the ideal form of virtue would be a kind of knowledge of right use of things. And when we discuss that text, we focus primarily on things like money and good looks and influence, things that are seemingly beneficial and indeed potentially beneficial, but can also be ruinous. And whether these potentially beneficial things are actually beneficial has to do with whether you use them right. And knowledge of how to use things right is wisdom. Well, in this case, it looks like the thing in question is your own life, understood primarily with respect to time. So the fool is the one who wastes whatever amount of lifetime he has at his disposal, whereas the wise individual lives that time such that, I guess at the limit, even a life of 20 or 30 years would be sufficient. So I guess long enough to uncover this Stoic wisdom, and then perhaps just a day to live in light of it would be sufficient for the wise individual. Now, one element of Seneca's critique of the fool is certainly that he or she treats big chunks of lifetime instrumentally. In other words, a period of time is treated as an investment in a future outcome. There are a lot of aspects of the critique. It's interesting. The main one is probably that when you invest your time that way, you are implicitly devaluing it with respect to the goal. In other words, it's a basic economic principle, right? Uh, you would not invest said chunk of lifetime into the outcome if you did not think that the outcome was worth more than the chunk of lifetime you're investing in it. So you're devaluing your own lifetime with respect to some outcome. Furthermore, because the outcome is exposed to fortune, you may not get what you want. And even if you do, you're going to be anxious about keeping it. So that's the general tenor of Seneca's critique of the fool's attitude towards his or her own lifetime, namely that it's treated as an investment in a future outcome. But what's a bit frustrating about the text is it's not exactly clear how the wise individual treats his own lifetime. Seneca does have quite a bit to say about it. The problem is it's not always consistent. Sometimes it seems that the wise person lives in the present. Sometimes it seems that the wise person lives primarily in the past. Sometimes it seems that the wise person has plans. Sometimes it seems that the wise person does not have plans because the plans involve expectation, right? You'll hear Seneca at one point say something like the root of all human failing is expectation, right? Now, there are ways to iron all that out and have Seneca's view become coherent enough. But I just want to put out there one feature of Seneca's description of the wise person's relation to his or her lifetime. I'm going to put it out there. I don't think it'll make it into the lecture, but I think this is probably the most thought-provoking thing that Seneca says on this score. He extends the economic metaphor about investing time, but he says that the wise person invests all of his time. All of it, he says, was invested usefully, or something to that effect. And it struck me that there's something to follow up on here, which is that the fool seems to always be dividing up his or her lifetime. So there's the time that I'm investing in the goal, and then once I achieve the goal, that's when my real life begins. It could be that that division is why Seneca treats desire as a destroyer of the self. we perhaps are invited here to think of self not as like a human body, but the self is just the totality of one's lifetime, the totality of the life that one has at one's disposal. This, at the very least, is the kind of theater in which the self becomes what it is. And perhaps Seneca's idea is that what really characterizes the fool is this dispersal of lifetime, this division of lifetime, this segmentation of lifetime into parts. Whereas to invest the whole of your lifetime, right, to live every moment of your life such that all of it is invested, is a very strange thing to think through, because you're not investing it for the sake of, you're not investing some part of it for the sake of what's to come afterwards. Somehow you just live in each moment such that your entire lifetime is committed. Your entire lifetime is at stake. Not just these hours, not just this year, not just this life phase, which would always leave something outstanding, but rather the whole of life as invested. Now, I'm not sure entirely what to make of that, but I think it's a worthwhile beginning for reflection. If one were to try to make Seneca's, it's a letter he's writing. If one were to try to turn the sentiments of this letter into something more systematic, it strikes me that that might be a good place to start. All right, see you guys tomorrow.